Question is blowing in the wind. It has been a long journey for the instrument that is widely agreed will reposition the petroleum sector for good and in the interest of Nigeria and Nigerians. And we are talking about the infamous Petroleum Industry Bill, popularly called the PIB. It was part of the recommendation of a presidential committee that was set up to carry out oil and gas sector reforms in Nigeria in the year 2007.
That's right, Claire. And that committee, amongst other things, was worried that that bill, that reform is necessary because of the country's aspiration of becoming one of the most industrialized nations by the year 2020. So those reforms were thought of, and then they were expected to form the nucleus of Nigeria's aspiration, of course, to attaining that status of one of the most developed economies in the world.
A very tall dream, Adra, if you ask me. But it is one that is achievable, and everybody, agrees on that. But for that to happen, it was envisaged that the major source of revenue to the Federation, that's the oil and gas sector, must be repositioned for greater efficiency, openness and competition that is built on corporate governance as obtained in other resource-rich nations of the world.
Now, the proposed legislation was therefore designed to strengthen the capacity of indigenous Nigerian companies in the oil and gas sector to compete with international oil companies in the search for and acquisition of hydrocarbons in Nigeria.
Now, that measure was also intended to reduce to the barest minimum federal government exposure to oil and gas exploration and production through joint venture operations, JVO. Of course, to date, the content of the bill has become a very contentious issue and is yet to see the light of the day. So why is there so much contention about the bill, and what is responsible for the delay in passing the PIB bill? Now, that is the topic of our conversation this morning on the program Good Morning Nigeria today. I am Claire Adelabu Abdurrazak. Thank you for joining us on this very first Monday in the new year 2015.
My name is Ibrahim Adra. Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the NTA. Now, Claire, even more to that is the fact that we're now in a new legislative year, and the fear is, if care is not taken, this year might just run out again without that bill seeing the light of the day.
A very good reason why we are discussing this topic this morning.
All right. We'll have discussants who will come in the studio and we'll be talking about this, see if we can shed some light on the issues that are contending as far as the PIB bill is concerned. But again, we have our regular segments as usual to give you the full complement of Good Morning Nigeria. We'll be talking sports, we'll be looking at the development on the foreign scene, and of course business to bring you up to speed as to development in that sector. But first, Claire, let's get to know what's happening around.
Laure, I won't miss that name today. Laure Bala Hassan, LBH. She's on the news this morning. Laure, good morning.
Good morning, Claire. Welcome to the news. Nigerians have been reassured of better days in spite of the challenges the country is going through. President Goodluck Jonathan made the remark at the first New Year 2015 Sunday service as he worshipped along with his family at St. Stephen's Anglican Church, Otuoke, Bayelsa State. He also stressed that in spite of the challenges, the country will move forward.
To God, with open hearts, God will surely see us through. I know this country has a lot of potentials. We have not reached where we want to go. We have not. It's good as saying we have not even started the journey, but we see a bright future for this country. And in spite of the challenges we have, the little bumps and so on, the rest assured that Nigeria would move and Nigeria would be a great country.
I have not seen anything that is too big for God to do. And what God will do at the beginning of time, before man will imagine it, he had already decided what will happen. This year, the greatest event we expect in this country is election. God has written his decision long ago.
Meanwhile, 502 Nigerian Christian pilgrims who traveled to Israel have returned to Abuja. The Executive Secretary of Nigeria Christian Pilgrims Commission received them at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja.
Use us to touch so many people that are going to come in contact with us. Let us be good examples of our Lord Jesus Christ. Preach peace wherever we go. And I can assure you, God willing, peace will certainly return to Nigeria. Amen. We are going to overcome. Our election will be successful. And at the end of it all of us will give glory and honor to Him.
Thinking over there, Nigerian good people, great nation. And that is it. And 2015 shall be a very peaceful year. The election will come and go. Nigeria will remain.
But we have prayed that we are going to wax stronger and grow better in development, transformation. Highest limit is our target.
The spiritual impartation we received is something that is so amazing. It's something that I cannot explain. We have gone to sites and we have gone to places, and I believe our spiritual life is no longer the same.
Indeed, I pray for my nation in particular because I have been experiencing a lot out of what has been happening to our nation. Is something that is like a burden to everyone. So I have to pray for my nation in particular.
Senate President David Mark has urged public office seekers to make service delivery anchored on the welfare and security of the people, the cornerstone of their ambitions. He stated this in a message delivered by his wife at Agumale, Ado local government area of Benue State, where he was conferred with a chieftaincy title by the paramount ruler of the community, Chief Joseph Ochili.
Greater than her peers. In his message, Senator Mark told
Supervising Minister of Information, Dr. Nuruddin Mohammed, says the country's agricultural transformation agenda has guaranteed a 25 billion naira agric loan to farmers, a policy that has ensured increase in food production in the nation. This was while presenting the current administration scorecard in the sector.
Achievement in the subsector are facts that are in the public domain. The fall in the rate of inflation from double digit to single digit has been partly due to higher domestic production of food. The nation's food import.
Time to pause for some messages. The news continues in a moment.
Shopee has ensured the reconstruction of the Abuja-Lokoja Road and the East-West Road in Port Harcourt.
The standard gauge rail tracks from Abuja to Kaduna and Lagos to Kano indicate that our trains are coming back.
The second Niger Bridge in the southeast and the local Oweto Bridge in the north-central are in progress, thanks to Shopee.
Shopee's mass transit program has made transportation easier for Nigerians.
Shopee has rehabilitated over 1,000 health centers across Nigeria.
Shopee has provided mama kits to pregnant women, and polio is on the verge of eradication.
Shopee has also ensured the provision of social amenities and through its various training programs for young people guarantees a better future.
Shopee, delivering service with integrity.
Every year, the Obi Lulu Briggs Foundation seeks to touch the lives of a segment of the Nigerian society as part of efforts to give back to the society. This year, the beneficiaries are the senior citizens in the Niger Delta region. They converged on Abonima, Akukutoru local government area of River State to have a taste of the New Year festivities.
Able to increase the content of each program. The beneficiaries are increasing. More local governments are added. We have more communities where we have beneficiaries today. Medical mission, for instance, we now have our own equipment, which we imported from the United States of America. They have arrived.
The goal is to give the senior citizens a sense of belonging, a gesture that attracted words of gratitude from the group.
God, that He should preserve a special place for them in heaven. So
it's their own money they are using to dress us this way every week, every month, every year. God will give a long life with His own family.
In ancient China, emperors asserted their authority by engraving their pronouncements on stone and steel for posterity and to preserve the power of the word. This elevated the status of Chinese calligraphy, leading to the development of many forms of art in China, including seal carving and paper cutting. Correspondent Julieta Aino met a master of Chinese calligraphy, a culture still widely appreciated and held in high esteem in today's China.
Known as the visual art form prized above all else in traditional China, the Chinese calligraphy is still widely revered in the Chinese culture. It is not an art form for just anyone. It requires the tutelage of a master and lots of years of practice.
The sense of the movement of the brush, of the strokes, Sometimes you can find calligraphers that really can write characters as they are still dancing. They are they are motionless, but they can give you the sense that they are still moving. It's like a dance. Every character has its own meaning and can be written in different ways, in different styles, of course, following certain rules.
Master Li started learning the art from age 4 to 5 and has been practicing ever since. He said Chinese calligraphy was widely recognized as fine art long before painting. Traced back to 4000 BC, the ink brush, ink, paper and inkstone are the 4 essential implements of the Chinese calligraphy.
In Chinese word, the word is like a people, and when you're writing a word, you can feel people what is like and his emotions in it. So, and also it contains the Chinese traditional culture in writing the characters.
Paper cutting and copper chiseling also form part of an art over 800 years old. Each artistic stroke is made with a special meaning. Miss Ru learns the art from Master He Yan, becoming the leading successor of intangible cultural heritage in Guangdong province.
The flower and the birds means people have a rich life.
Experts say the elevated status of calligraphy in China reflects the importance of the word, since it is a culture devoted to the power of the word. From Foshan, China, Julieta Aino, NTA News.
And that's the main news. It's now back to Claire and Adra. Good morning.
Many thanks to you, Laurie. Now let's go straight to business. Businesses would open for the year shortly. Now, that is even as major economic indices suffer setback at the close of the year 2014. But the federal government, in a very convincing manner, has said that the economy is sure of absorbing the shocks come 2015. Now, business news is next, and Leah Katumba Batunde is our guide.
Hello and welcome to Good Morning Nigeria Business News. The holidays are over and financial markets are opening in a short while with high expectations. It is a new day, a new week, a new month, and a brand new year to begin business. 2014 did not record the happy ending anticipated from earlier predictions. The Naira for starts ended alongside the cedi of Ghana and the Zambian kwacha as the worst performing currencies in Africa. The decline in global oil prices also took its toll on the nation's resources as stocks in the capital market also nosedived. Year-to-date loss of major indices at the Nigerian Stock Exchange stood at 16.14%. Last week also witnessed only 3 trading days as the federal government declared Thursday and Friday public holidays to commemorate the New Year and Eid al-Maulud. The oil share index and market capitalization appreciated by 0.66% to close on Wednesday at 34,657.15 points and 11.478 trillion naira. Similarly, all the indices finished higher during the week, with the exception of the NSE Banking Index and NSE Oil and Gas Index that shed 6.69% and 19.4%. Meanwhile, a turnover of 1.245 billion shares worth 15.898 billion naira in 12,018 deals were traded during the week by investors on the floor of the exchange, in contrast to a total of 1.86 billion shares valued at 12.76 billion naira that exchanged hands in the preceding week in 13,469 deals. 39 equities appreciated in price during the week, 36 equities depreciated in price, while 122 equities remained unchanged. Now the federal government has restated its determination to maintain growth and stabilize the economy this year, despite the challenge of declining revenue among oil-producing countries. The Minister of State for Finance, Ambassador Bashir Yuguda, who made this known in Abuja, stressed that the government would not waver in its resolve to further diversify the economy, significantly boost non-oil revenues, plug loopholes, and cut unnecessary expenditure. Yuguda described 2014 as a challenging year, but maintained that the country managed to maintain a stable economic growth and re-establish itself as Africa's largest economy with an impressive diversification trajectory.
A country where, or in the world where the dynamics of the economy is changing by the day, whereby we have inflation, whereby you have the cost of everything little bit going up, or not commensurate with your earnings, you need to think and do better than what you are giving to the depositors.
The minister further stated that the planned takeoff of the Development Bank of Nigeria early this year was in line with the bid to sustain growth, as it would greatly enhance and improve medium to long-term financing for Nigerian businesses going forward. Crude oil prices have gone clearly below the 2015 budget benchmark of $65 per barrel, a trend analysts reason, if sustained for long, might affect government spending in the year. However, you could emphasize that the government's scenario-based approach to the regime of oil price shocks is structured to proactively respond to such situations. And that is business news this morning. Good Morning Nigeria would continue. My name is Leah Katung Babatunde.
Many thanks to you, Leah. Now, if you just joined us, this is Good Morning Nigeria, and up next is a look at the newspapers. Now in the studio, as usual, to look at the papers and give us a review of them is Bayo Atebi. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
How is the weather treating you?
Fine, thank you. Good morning, Nigeria.
Claire, what papers do you have?
Okay, we started with Nigerian pilot. Nigerian pilot leads with CJN, EFCC to meet on 6 indicted judges. Details are on page 4. That's the lead story on the Nigerian pilot. And then moving down, there's a picture story there of Vice President Nnamdi Sambo, former Governor of Anambra State, Peter Obi, and Minister of State Finance, Ambassador Bashir Yuguda, of course, as well as Governor Theodore Oji of Abia State. And that was during a traditional marriage ceremony at the weekend in Otoike, Bayelsa State. Now, that picture story there, if you get it, below the picture story, you get concerns as Obasanjo Yoruba women leaders meet. Concerns as Obasanjo Yoruba women leaders meet. And other stories trending at the bottom there, we've reinvented Nigeria's economy, that's PDP, details on page 6. Abuja comes alive after Yuletide celebrations, it is on page 4. And mutiny, UN may wade into 54 soldiers' conviction, details on page 6. And SIM national ID cards producers get 1.1 billion naira grant. And Gobare's Governor Ajimobi challenges Ladoja Akala to debate, details on page 5. And just below the masthead, we have where you have picture of President Goodluck Jonathan. Despite setbacks, Nigeria's future bright, coming from President Goodluck Jonathan. Details on page 4. And South APC rejects Cross River wreck on page 6. That's the Nigerian pilot. The Guardian leads with the story, UN moves to halt execution of 54 Nigerian soldiers on death row. That's the lead story. There's just a picture story in front also there. And that's the picture story of All Progressive Congress presidential candidate and his running mate, Lagos State Governor there, of course, as well as the General Overseer of Redeemed Christian Church of God during an annual Thanksgiving service in Lagos yesterday. Other stories on the front page, on the right column there, squads feared killed in Borno, Yobe attacks, and military post sacked. Just coming down there. Bakari calls for postponement of 2015 elections. Details on page 4. And why government should reduce fuel prices, increase workers' salary. Details on page 5. And Ambode unfolds manifesto, plans 25 billion naira jobs fund and others. Details on page 7. That's the Guardian. And Daily Trust. The Daily Trust leads with the story, Boko Haram seizes Baga, dislodges multinational force. And a picture story now is that of horse riders during a special Daba to celebrate Maulud in Hadija, Jigawa State at the weekend. And there you have that picture story there. And just trending at the bottom, federal government oil subsidy drops from 44 naira to 90 kobo per litre. You can see details on page 21. And again, just below the masthead, Jonathan seeks audience with Obasanjo. Details on page 4. That's Daily Trust. And finally, from me, The Nation. And The Nation has quite a number of stories on its front page. But the lead story, besides the picture story making the front page there, you see the picture story. If the camera can just sit up a bit, you see the picture story there. But below that, INEC bans use of government cash resources for campaigns. Commission issues code of conduct to political parties, and the do's and don'ts are just listed below the lead story there. You find it. No party should issue any inciting statement, no intimidation of opponents by any means, no use of government fund resources for campaign. Parties must ensure there is no clash of rallies. Parties must file details of their rallies, and no destruction of opponents' posters. Those are the do's and don'ts, and the continuation of this report story, it's on page 4. Okay, let's just move a little below the masthead. Tokumbo vehicles, 35% levy begins April 30. It's also details on page 4. And Boko Haram seizes military base in Borno town, also continuation on page 4. And Nigeria's future is bright, says President Goodluck Jonathan. Challenges can't stop advancement. Details on page 6. And Oyegun, APC will reject flawed polls. Party chief seeks fair play. Details on page 6. Adra.
Let's look at the New Telegraph on the front page there. I'll begin from right below the masthead where you have the story. 214 reps warmed bench in 2014. It's promoted on the front page, but the details on page 2. TUC APC push for fuel price cut. Details on page 6. Stop 2015 elections. Buhari's ex-running mate seeks 2-year transitional government. That story is also on page 2 of the New Telegraph. PDP unveils war team. Nigerians will decide election outcome, says APC. That's the New Telegraph. Let's move on to This Day newspaper for today. This Day has, right above the masthead there, National Assembly to decide final benchmark for 2015 budget. The story is continued on page 8. And I will sanction Mbaka if he is under my diocese, says Onayeko. Details on page 10. There is a picture story there that the This Day newspaper is captioning Buhari goes to church. Boko Haram captures Baga, kills scores in Borno Yobe. And Atiku Kwankwaso vow not to return to PDP as APC loads Ohanese's stand on Jonathan. These are some of the stories that are trending on the This Day newspaper for today. Leadership is next. Falling oil price erodes 2014 capital expenditure by 59%. Again, falling oil price erodes 2014 capital expenditure by 59%. Details on page 5. Why Father Mbaka is fighting Jonathan. Details on page 5 as well. The leading story on the leadership is UN moves to stop execution of 54 soldiers. Holds talk with Jonathan in Abuja. And another writer says 1 killed, 4 injured in Adamawa bomb blast. Bakari calls for postponement of February polls if, on page 10, and that's at the bottom of the leadership newspaper. The last newspaper I have this morning is the Daily Sun, and it seemed to focus its attention on only one story, or perhaps a couple of them. My life in danger. Reverend Father Mbaka cries out. More Nigerians clash over priest's sermon. And Mbaka, you don't know what he said about presidential election. All the details on pages 54 and 55 of the Daily Sun newspapers. Daily Sun is also reporting soldiers killed in ambush, 2 die in Adamawa explosion. And Akpabio's 25,272 man choir breaks Guinness World Record. That's on page 11. Now, with those beautifully colored papers in your hand, it tells me there is a lot to discuss. So let's go right away.
It's the beginning of the week with
and I have my yellow card as well.
So many stories over the weekend. But let's start quickly with the stories of the insurgents. The insurgents attacked Baga Town. Baga Town is on the Lake Chad, the border between Nigeria, Chad, and Cameroon. Unfortunately, they abducted 40 young men with ages between 10 and 23. Okay. And we have a multinational joint task military force situation in Baga, comprising Nigeria, Cameroon, and Chad soldiers. And one is beginning to wonder what is happening. You recall, just about a month ago, they invaded that same Baga, and they, in fact, killed people and were even dumping some of them into Lake Chad. You also will recall in November 2013, there was an effort by the military to ward off insurgency in Baga, and there was hue and cry raised, in fact, using satellite pictures and alleging that Nigerian military had massacred people in Baga. Unfortunately, too, in Adamawa, Mehia local government area, where people are coming back after the towns have been replaced, people gather and were trying to warm themselves up in the Hamatan cold, not knowing that a compartment they picked and put in the fire contained an IED. It exploded and killed. Some say it's 1 person, others, like we read in your report, they say it's 2 people. However, the concern about election is there in Enugu State too. There, you have Fulanis who are led by Alhaji Gidado Sadiq. He's saying that the speculation that Fulanis, because of the election, are moving from Enugu and going to the north is not true. And he has, in fact, postulated that the election 2015 is going to be peaceful. He has expressed his concern, his appreciation by the effort put together by the Anambra State government that has seen to the people in Uguaru and Umumbo, where there were clashes between herdsmen and farmers, and this has been resolved, and is hoping that there won't be a crisis. Now, so many clergymen are in the news. First, there is the Muslim right concern that has cautioned politicians, security agencies, about utterances that is capable of plunging the nation into crisis. This organization is led by Professor Ishaq Akitola. He says the dramatic personnel in the 2015 election, the presidency, the ruling party, the opposition, the Nigerian army, and the police, and all of them must observe decorum. He says that they have to adopt civilized behavior, respect rule of law, and adhere to the principles of democracy and avoid charging the polity. Talking about charging the polity, again, you remember Pastor Tunde Bakare of the Later Rain Assembly, like the report you read there. He has called on the federal government and the National Assembly to activate Section 135, subsection 3, to suspend 2015 elections. He says that if the Federation is at war in which territory of Nigeria is physically involved, and the president considers it that it's not practicable to hold elections, then the National Assembly may be seek a resolution from the National Assembly to extend the period of that is supposed to end in 4 years. And this has to be extended in periods of 6 months. And he said in the interim, Why that is done, these will help the nation to settle down, because we cannot run from the fact that the nation is currently at war. He recalls that when in May 14, 2013, while declaring a state of emergency, the nation was told categorically that the insurgents' activities is tantamount to declaring war on Nigeria. And therefore, he has argued that an interim government should actually be set up, comprising of respected elder statesmen and appointed leaders from the 6 geopolitical zones, and they should constitute a body that will oversee, and one of their tasks will be to implement recommendations of the National Conference. You also recall that the Reverend Ejike Mbaka has called another controversy. He seems to have stirred the political honest nest with his sermon last Thursday. Some say that he has turned the pulpit to a political rostrum. Others say he spoke truth to power. And others say he is not God and he was trying to play God. Some also expressed the opinions that as a clergy, he is homely and what he said was the truth. But the confusion is that the same clergy on November 14th had praised the president, and he said that were it not for the obstacles that were put in his way, his performance would have been outstanding. Now, what can one make out of this? It may appear that the clergy will be speaking from both sides of the mouth. November 14th, he was praising the president to high heavens, and last Thursday, December 1st, he was calling on the president to resign. But you recall also that last week, we reviewed a report, and another clergy, Sheikh Ahmad Gumi, said that clergymen in an atmosphere like this are supposed to behave like referees. Referees in the sense that they are neutral. Their parishes or their followers, when they come to either the church or the mosque, belong to all the political parties. They should encourage them to vote according to their conscience, to vote without violence, and not a clergyman should not take sides. And if one is to follow, yes, if one should follow that, there are 3 critical institutions that must be neutral in an atmosphere of political context. One has been identified, the clergy, because followers belong to all parties, and one has to be very careful. He has to be neutral. Similarly, the mass media itself has to be neutral in the sense that they are supposed to convey information to help the electorate make informed decisions. The third is the traditional institutions, who are fathers of all, and they should be seen also to be as much as possible to be neutral. This is the only way I think these 3 institutions will not compromise their neutrality. There are instances where media tend to be political. You recall, we had a newspaper in this country that apparently was pandering to a political party, and when they recruited their staff, they told them, here, we are not doing journalism, we are doing politics. And the paper is dead today. They went to the extent of publishing nude photographs of their political opponents. And sometimes, some media do endorse political candidates, and they shoot themselves in the foot. It is done in the US. Sometimes they come out and take a position about supporting a political candidate. But in our evolving democracy, most often than not, if you come out to root out for a political party, and eventually that political party did not win, it invariably kills that newspaper. And one thing with newspapers is that, particularly the media, which is our own field, the media is a public institution. It may have been established by an individual, but the moment it becomes a public commodity, it is no longer your own. It is owned by the public, and it must, as much as possible, be neutral. There's a need, of course, to update on the Air Asia. They have found 4 big things that look like fuselage under the sea, and bad weather stopped them from following up. By now, they are trying to retrieve those 4 identified bodies, and they are hoping that one of them could be the fuselage that contains some of the bodies. So far, 40 bodies have been retrieved. 6 of them have been identified by DNA. The Nigerian Army has also come to say that it is in the possession of the credentials of General Muhammadu Buhari, and that it is his policy to keep records of all 7 retired and deceased officers, and such officers can apply for copies of such records. Before the yellow card comes, we were talking about pump price. There are reports indicating that the pump price, because of the drop in the oil price in the world market, current price is put at $57.94 per barrel, and it is a hope that the pump price, now with that done, the landing price of fuel is now about 97 naira 90 kobo. So the subsidy on the fuel is now only about 90 kobo, and it is hoped that that will bring some succor and reduce the pump price. Play.
All right, Bayo Atoyobi, thank you for the review. And I thought you will just quickly talk about the Tokumbo vehicles, 35% levy, of course, which is supposed to begin in April.
Yeah, it has been moved from January to April. I don't know whether you are planning to buy a car, but by April, you are only postponing the next day. It is coming. Well, it is part of the economic measures. Yes, particularly to encourage our own domestic assembly plants. Some nations, what they did was, they shut their doors and they say, anything we cannot produce, we don't need. And that is how some of the Asian giants developed. We need to begin to patronize made in Nigeria goods. We will say they are Igbo made, they are Yoruba made, they are Hausa made. But gradually, by the time we keep using it, we will improve and then we will get somewhere else. Consumerism from abroad does not help our economy. That is what is helping to deplete our economy.
All right, Bayo, thank you for your review, and we hope to see you tomorrow again.
Thank you very much. Bye.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria GMN on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We'll take a break now.
A new day is almost a clean slate. The plethora of opportunities offered. The chance to choose.
Investing in agriculture is the key.
Set your agenda. Begin your day. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, thank you for joining us. Now, for history students, this is a familiar story. In 1956, oil was first discovered in Oloibiri in present-day Bayelsa State. And 2 years after, in 1958, exploration started. Now, decades later, there's been no comprehensive law in place to regulate that industry. Now, following the presidential committee that was set up in 2007 to reform the oil and gas sector, the committee thought it wise to come up with a legislation that will regulate the industry in the interests of the nation and for Nigerians. And that's how the Petroleum Industry Bill came up. Now, it was put to the National Assembly in 2009, and in 2012, it was presented again to the 7th Legislative Assembly. Now, it has passed through first and second readings. Now, the concern now is that the 7th Legislative Assembly is gradually coming to an end. Will the PIB, Petroleum Industry Bill, be passed into law? And Jibuno kickstarts our conversation this morning on this topic with this backgrounder.
Since the discovery of oil in Oloibiri, Bayelsa State in 1956, the industry has remained without a comprehensive law to enable it to meet international best practices. A number of unincorporated joint ventures with international oil companies aimed at developing the industry came into effect in the 1990s. But funding challenges for them became an issue, prompting alternative funding strategies known as production sharing contracts. These have, however, been faulted over time due to issues of transparency. In the year 2000, the federal government constituted the first Oil and Gas Reform Implementation Committee, OGIC, to recommend a policy for reforming the sector. The committee recommended that the commercial institutions in the sector be separated from the regulatory and policy-making institutions. Later in 2007, the OGIC was reconstituted under the chairmanship of Dr. Rilwan Lukman to use the provisions of the National Oil and Gas Policy to set up legal, regulatory and institutional structures for managing the sector. The committee's report was submitted in 2008, recommending regulatory and institutional frameworks that, when implemented, will sanitize the industry. The report formed the basis for the first PIB submitted in 2008 as an executive bill. The controversy raised by the bill prompted the constitution of a Federal interagency team headed by Dr. Tim Okun, NNPC Group General Manager Strategy, to review the bill. The team's report submitted in 2010 introduced more stringent fiscal provisions that guarantee a higher share of oil revenues to Nigeria. The report has, however, been widely described as the crux of the controversies around the PIB. In 2011, the Senate and House of Representatives also respectively submitted their versions of the bill. A joint committee of the National Assembly is currently working on harmonizing all the nagging issues in the bill. Some of the concerns raised over the provisions of the PIB are that fiscal provisions will increase cost of doing business. Others are retroactive reversal of contracts, allocated owners have to relinquish acreage, while oil companies pay for quantity produced instead of quantity exported. Industry watchers say the PIB, when passed, is expected to ensure clarity in the industry and serve as an incentive for a more vibrant oil and gas sector. They, however, emphasize that with all the work done on the bill, the time to pass it is now, before the tenure of the 7th National Assembly expires.
All right, thank you very much, Aunt Jibuno, for that package. And if you've just joined us, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria, and subject of our conversation this morning is on the Petroleum Industry Bill, PIB. And we have joined us here in the studio, distinguished Senator Lee Meba, former senator representing Rivers Southeast Senatorial District between 2003 and 2011. And of course, he sponsored the Nigeria Content Act in the oil and gas industry. He was chairman Joint Committee on PIB 2008 and 2011, and Chairman Senate Committee on Petroleum Upstream between 2003 and 2011. Distinguished Senator Lee Meba, thank you for joining us on Good Morning.
Thank you very much.
Now, PIB has been on the table for quite a long time. What do you feel at the moment? The 7th Legislative Assembly is almost coming to an end. What are your concerns now concerning the PIB?
Thank you very much, and good morning, viewers. My concern is what I predicted when I left the Senate in 2011, that I don't see the PIB coming on stream by 2011 and by the end of 2015, because of the complexities and the issues that were arising at the time I left. And so the situation, I knew we steadily become or snowball into a huge political issues, huge issues of North-South divide, and which was not supposed to be. We handled all these issues. All these issues were resolved before we started taking the bill clause by clause. But from nowhere, issues which I would not like to raise till I write my book erupted, and the bill was stopped. It was going clause by clause in their House. It was going clause by clause in the Senate. The House have reached about 100 and something clauses. The Senate have gone just about 4 or 5 clauses, and it was stopped. And at that point, I knew it was not going to be easy for it to come back on stream.
Maybe what I should ask here is, now, when you were sponsoring this bill, there were good intentions. Perhaps for the purpose of this conversation, can you restate those things that you sought this bill to achieve, and why did you also share the same fear, even at that time, that it may not be passed, if it has such laudable objectives?
You know, there were 2 bills here now. The first bill, which I started in 2005, was the Nigerian Content Development Act in the oil and gas industry. Now, what was the reason for this bill? I, a petroleum engineer who have served in the oil field, knowing the difficulties of Nigerians, decided as part of my reason for going to the Senate to create a bill that we provide a working condition for Nigerian companies and Nigerian workers. And that is all about the Nigerian Content Development Act. And that we started again, and in 2007, it became Tommy. The same issues that virtually rocked the PIB, the scenario were different in 2007. Every oil company, call it Total, call it Shell, call it Chevron, did not want the Nigerian Content Act. Why? Because all the businesses that were arising out of the oil business was being done by Europeans, Asians, Americans. And this Nigerian Content Act was the only way we can stop them and give the business to Nigerian companies. Because we are virtually in a country with used capital flight, oil production since 1958, Nigerian oil companies, all they have was subcontract on essential jobs that were supposed to really be handled by Nigerians. And the trend, if the trend of continued till now, poverty will be increasing. So knowing that the only way to plug this capital flight and invest business in Nigerian companies was to do this act. And that act started in 2000. I laid it on the table first in 2005. I even wrote a book when I finished to simplify it. Now, what was the purpose of the Nigerian Content Act? The purpose of the Nigerian Content Act was to make sure every business, because when you talk of oil business, you're talking of insurance, you're talking of legal, you're talking of medical, you're talking of logistic, transportation, banking. Mention all of them. Catering. It's all in one. Because the oil industry have the financial capacity. Everybody, those services are needed in the oil industry. People do not know. So that is why the act touches on catering. It touches on virtually all aspects of life that have to do with oil business. Domicile in Nigeria. And that's what we achieved. We achieved that one. If I didn't come back in 2008, there would have been nothing like Nigerian Content Act. Because at the point where we are taking it clause by clause in 2007, the same demons come. They have been able to organize themselves to stop it. And they did. They stopped it. When I came back in 2008, I started full blast. And it didn't take me another 3 years till 2010 before I could get it through for the president's assent. And still trouble come. Nigeria is going to be sanctioned. This bill, portions of this bill are against WTO. Oh, portions of this bill are against industry practice. Just masters sitting somewhere, conniving with Nigerian company even to thwart the bill. Now, the Nigerian Content Act is passed. I'm happy. I created an act that, I have done an act that created the Nigerian Content Monitoring Board a year ago. That's employing a lot of people. An act by now in the Nigerian Content Fund, because 1% of all contract awarded is called Nigerian Content Fee. We should have over $300 million there now. Nigerian companies confessed to me. A lot of companies came to me to give me good envelopes. Thank you. Because if I was compromising, I couldn't have passed the act. I am very sure that one of my key staff rejected very, very heavy inducement just for this act to pass. So if I wasn't a Nigerian, proper Nigerian, we could have passed it. But today, the Nigerian companies are enjoying life.
Okay, the Senator, as far back as 2011, you already had this premonition that the PIB bill will not.
But now let me tell you the link. I'm sorry, the link between the Nigerian Content Act and the PIB. The PIB is a law to replace the Petroleum Act of 1958. The Petroleum Act of 1958 has been the only oil law, even right now, that we are operating and were written by the British to favor the foreigners, to favor the Europeans. It's like a law that produced oil here, impoverished the Nigerian and enriched the foreigners. So it was introduced in 2008 by President Yar'Adua. When the bill came, I looked through the bill because after reading it was assigned to me as chairman of the Committee on Petroleum Upstream. Now, when I looked through the bill, one, there was nothing written in it about the welfare of the oil-producing communities. Nothing. So I went to Senate President David Mark. I said, Mr. President, what kind of law are we writing at this time when communities are crying for environmental degradation, for poverty, and we have nothing to protect the interests of the communities? You know, and smart and nationalistic as my Senate President always been, he said, the Senator Lee Mapa, what are you talking about? This law is for you to for you to treat. So anything you feel will not benefit Nigeria that is not inside, go ahead and do it. And I laugh because he threw the ball back at me. You are the chairman. You are the chairman of the committee to handle the bill. So whatever you feel will benefit Nigeria that is not in the bill, go ahead, put it. And I smile and say, thank you, Mr. President, because I was disarmed. Then I left. Then, what do we decide in the committee? To do a bill, we set up a tripod. One, a bill that will protect the interests of Nigeria in the oil-producing communities, the welfare of the Nigerian in the oil-producing community. Two, also a bill that will protect the investors, the foreign investors, and even local investors. And three, a bill that the tripod is investment, local the communities, and a bill that we promote and encourage local participation in the oil and gas industry. So once these three tripods was set, we were ready to go. Because if you don't protect the interest of the investors, they will run away. I know the President Yaradua called me 3 times and said, look, Chairman, make sure the bill you are doing does not drive away our investors, because we still need the Shell, we still need the Chevron, we still need the AGIP, all of them. And above all, we still need the Nigerians to participate gradually. So we set a target and said, look, if within the next 5-10 years, Nigerian companies should account for at least 10% of our total export. Because you have to start at least 20% of our total export. Because you have to do it gradually. Because the Shell, all of them have the big oil fields. So now the bill also should make sure that the Nigerian people living in the oil-producing communities are happy. And that was where we introduced into the bill the 10% equity participation by communities.
Senator Mebo, sorry, I have to interject at this point. If all these laudable objectives are imbued in this bill that we're talking about, perhaps we should begin to look at why it is becoming so problematic and difficult to pass.
Because
what are the issues?
Because he already said that as far back as 2011 when it started, you already had the premonition that it might not even be passed in 2015. But we're not talking about the same copies of the bill right now, because it has gone through several,
I will tell you something.
Yes.
There was an issue when we introduced the 10% community fund. What was the issue there? Everybody around the northern senators, all the northern governors kick that there is 13% derivation in the constitution. If you give another 10%, it's going to be another money. We said no. So we took time, talked to governors, we talked to our colleagues, and we were able to convince everybody. What was the purpose of the 10%? We told our colleagues, oil will soon be found in Borunu, oil will soon be found in Taraba, everywhere around the Shard Belt, oil will be found there. If oil is found there, if we have 10%, you are lucky. Because all the marginalization, all the issue of oil field confrontation with community people that took place in the Niger Delta, you will not suffer it. You will just start to reap from day one, 10% into a host community fund for you, and everybody will be convinced. And that is the truth. Because when the truth is on the table, everybody is convinced. You have to convince people. And that is why the money was not going to be paid to any state. We set up the framework of how 10% goes to the community directly, not to state, not to local government, but the communities. And all our colleagues were like, they applauded it, that oil money of the 13% is going to the oil producing state, and they have been squandered. The communities do not even, because that money is supposed to, the 13% is supposed to be source of derivation. Use it to develop the source of derivation. And the source of derivation are the communities where oil are found. But this money end up only in the state capital.
Is that the most contentious issue about the bill?
That is the most contentious issue of the bill on the part of Nigeria, and that is the political issue. That was the big issue that almost stopped the bill from being passed. There are issues of the multinational protesting that, look, the tax is too much. That is why when the president spoke to me, he told me, I'm referring to President Yaradua, after we had a joint meeting with the late Remani Lukman, because there was issues around the bill. Because of what the Senate President told me, we did our own version of the bill. and set aside what was brought by the executive, because that is our business.
What was the fear or the concern of the multinationals about this bill?
Now, what the government brought put taxes as high as 85% up to 90%. And that was why the president said, look, no, don't do that. Just let them make a law that have a tax regime that is swinging in the middle, not too low, not too high. Because we are within the Gulf of Guinea. And the Gulf of Guinea, we have developing, we have emerging oil countries. Angola is right there. Oil is gushing. There is Burkina Faso. There is Guinea-Bissau. There is so many countries within the Gulf of Guinea. So many countries. Even when you now go to the Great Lake region, we now see emerging oil companies in the Great Lake region. Uganda have oil, Congo have oil, all sorts of countries have oil. And don't forget, Sao Tome and Principe, they are developing their oil field. So the man said, look, the president said, if you do a bill that the tax is too high, everybody will ride away from here to Angola. Now, those were some of the, controversial issues. We want all the tax immediately. And that were the issues. The issue, first, the political issue of the Niger Delta getting too much money now. Secondly, the multinationals say, look, we are going to run away. The tax you are placing on us is the highest in the world. And thirdly, people within the bureaucracy of NNPC who feel, this is very important, who feel that the bill is going to stiffen their hands, is going to stop a lot of business as usual, it's going to be a bill that somebody was making a lot of money, but stop now, don't make any money. The money belongs to Nigeria.
And
overall, a bill that's stripping my powers. I don't see my powers retained in this act.
All right,
and these are still retained
Senator
in this copy.
Let's get the perspective of another of our guests this morning, who is in our Lagos Network studio, Balazaka, a petroleum engineer and chief executive of an oil company. Good morning. Thank you for joining us for this discussion this morning.
Good morning, viewers. Good morning, distinguished senator.
Now, straight away, Balazaka, what in your opinion are the bones of contention as far as this bill is concerned?
And the senator, we have worked on the same drilling rig in the early 90s when we were probably in our 20s. So I know Senator very well. He knows me very well. We've worked on the oil rigs together. You see, one thing about the petroleum industry bill, I mean, the senator has explained so many things which are actually in tandem with the quagmire we are experiencing today. But one thing we need to understand is this. We are not after perfect laws. We are after realistic laws. And just like what the senator explained, we must not have everything 100%. What we want is to have something that is going to be realistic. Because as long as this bill is not passed, right, knowing that oil and gas revenues constitute the oxygen of Nigerian economy, we are going to continually suffer. Because if you look at it, because this bill has not been passed, further exploration has stopped. And as distinguished senator explained, other countries are making discoveries. There is an increase in the aggregate world reserve, but the national reserve in Nigeria is not increasing. When you look at the reserve versus the production ratio today, in case of Nigeria, everything is going down because we don't have further exploration. And some of the reasons the senator gave were correct, but it was just unfortunate. Because if you look at it today, we shouldn't be talking about sectionalism. Tribalism should be out of our democratic structures. From what happened in these cases of insurgents, you will discover that, I mean, if there is problem in any part of Nigeria, Nigerians will go to anywhere they feel will be hospitable and habitable. And as Senator explained today, If tomorrow oil is discovered in other parts of the country, I mean, they will also benefit from that host community fund. So what needs to be done is, let us define what constitutes a host community. A host community is an area that is associated with physical extraction. And as Senator says it, I mean, who explained it, if tomorrow oil is discovered in some of those potential basins, they will automatically enjoy from what has already been discussed, analyzed, and passed into law. And as long as this bill is not passed into law, potential investors will not be encouraged. So we should be after a law that will have an international appeal for foreign direct investment into the country, as the senator explained. Then it should have a local appreciation and tolerance to encourage, I mean, the local investors. Because even the PIB, the Nigerian local content at some point will be predicated on the PIB. The PIB is a totality.
Let me interject here. You are underscoring the importance of this bill, which has been discussed time and time again. But our worry is this bill doesn't seem to be making any headway. And so we're wondering, what are the contentions? What, in your opinion, are the issues that are hindering progress for this bill? Them now.
Clearly, before talking about the likely issues, we need to understand that as an independent and a sovereign nation, right, the architecture of our economy and how we are going to manage our economy depends on us and our leaders. And in the case of leaders now, we are talking about people like the lawmakers or the legislature and the executive. As far as people like me are concerned personally, the worry, the frustration is within the bracket of the legislature and the executive. Because we've noticed that at one point or the other, we try to bring out something to analyze a particular regime. If you look at it, recently the price of gas has just been increased. We've already been talking about production sharing agreements that needs to be reviewed, because there has been reasonable technologies that have been developed in the deep seas. We need to review licenses, oil mining leases and oil prospecting licenses. So, but those who have the powers today are the legislators. So they need to understand the relevance. If there is a need for us to educate them more, we can do that, because we have oil and gas lawyers, oil and gas environmentalists, oil and gas accountant, right? We even have oil and gas journalists. So these people are enough for Nigerians to get educated. We need to move away from the 1969 Petroleum Act. There is a need for us to move in dynamism with what is happening in the global oil and gas world.
Let me ask you, now, the bill has passed through the first and second readings at both chambers of the National Assembly. Now, do you foresee any reason why it wouldn't be passed even before the end of this legislative year?
Well, if it is not passed, I will be disappointed, because I can tell you, as far back as 2010, the Honorable Minister for Petroleum was in the US at a world forum and said, as at that time, the petroleum industry bill was going to be passed. That was a world forum of oil and gas experts. So many of us cannot really see the reason why this bill shouldn't be passed into law. Because if you don't pass it into law, one thing is clear and fundamental. People will not come in to invest. Any investor that is going into a territory or into an area will want to know the legal, right, the fiscal, right, and the regulatory frameworks. And when you talk about legal, you are talking about contractual frameworks. When you talk about fiscal, you are talking about economic frameworks. And when you talk about regulatory, you are talking about procedural You cannot go and invest in a frontier, in a country where you don't have laws that will bind you. That means you wouldn't have, you are exposed to all kinds of danger. And I'm happy, I mean, people like the senator are those who actually initiated this. Because you're talking about somebody that has in-depth experience. And like I said, myself and senator have worked on the same drilling rigs in the early 90s. So he's not just talking as a mediocre. He's talking based on experience. And if you look at the way the whole thing was approached, it was to help Nigerians. And like he broadly explained, when this bill is passed into law, the oil and gas on its own would blossom, but a lot of ancillary services will blossom. Caterers will gain, carpenters will gain, drivers will gain, accountants will gain, even artists will gain. All kinds of people will gain. So it will be for the totality and benefits of Nigeria.
To Abuja, the distinguished Senator Miba. Now, some people have pointed out a certain aspect of the bill, which of course invests, excessive powers in the office of the Minister of Petroleum Resources. And the reason is this will seem to, be, given credence to the issue of corruption and all that. Is that a reasonable,
You're talking about powers.
Yes.
That is why we created the Nigerian Petroleum Commission. The Nigerian Petroleum Commission was a creation of the Senate, of our committee, but the creation of the National Assembly into the bill. And why do we do this? We look through the bill. No bill gives any power to a minister. No. Every bill, powers, and every parastatal by our constitution belong to the president. Every minister exercising any powers is delegated executive powers by the president. So you don't mention any minister. Now, when we see the complexity of this, and to make sure the oil industry is well managed, we created in that our bill, in our own version, the Nigerian Petroleum Commission. Now, the Nigerian Petroleum Commission, we brought out all the experts, but above all, to be sure that a minister still have an air of authority, we design it after the Nigerian the successes of the Nigerian Sport Commission. And so we created the Nigerian Petroleum Commission. And in that act, in our own version, we said the minister is the chairman of the commission. But the commission have DG, who is a professional, who must be have up to 15, 20, 25 years of experience in the oil industry, and all the other directors. That right now is operating in Ghana. Ghana cut and paste. There is the Ghana Petroleum Commission, which has no controversy, which is driving the petroleum industry in Ghana now. Our own is always one controversy the other.
So you really don't think there is excessive power vested in the minister like...
no, what we did, in order not to call it, because when we saw a bill, they said office of the minister, and the powers, functions of the minister. We said, no, it's not correct. I'm a professional. Look, I am a member of the Society for Petroleum Engineers worldwide. I'm a fellow of the Nigerian Society of Engineers. I'm a fellow of the Nigerian Society of Chemical Engineers. I have been in the field, like Bala said. I have been a rig worker. I have been a production expert. I have been everything around the oil field. And I know the best way powers are exercised is to exercise through a commission, not an individual. And above all, I think we were very fair to anybody who will become minister, because you are Minister of Petroleum and at the same time the chairman of the commission. Why do we do that? Because the commission have all the people with the technical capacity to advise the minister aright, so that there is no power absolutely for the minister to exercise, but every power exercise are powers who have been technically analyzed, technically put into test, so that the interest of the nation is not hurt. Accredites are going to be managed by the commission. All oil business are going to be supervised by the commission. And we put in the commission the best we ever had in this country. Because Nigerians are some of the most viable workers around the world in the oil industry. So we have that. But like I was trying to equate it with the PIB, like Bala was saying, and with the Nigerian Content Act. The Nigerian Content Act is basically built on top a petroleum law that will ensure that projects are taking place in the country. Because you cannot get the Content Act unless there are big projects. And today, the youth capital flight into Angola, into Burkina Faso is killing this country. Because no country, many of the companies are not investing in Nigeria now because of uncertainty. They are apprehensive. What will this law say? Do we invest in this country when we don't know what this law is saying? And you ask about passage. I weigh the capacity of the committee now. I've been monitoring the committee since I left. Lee, everybody were saying, Lee Maiba, stubborn, straightforward, direct. People don't approach my committee room to talk of doing this and that. No, they don't. Because we set up a criteria. We must do the right thing. We are not making a law for anybody. We are making a law to strengthen the institutions that regulate oil activities. Like for instance, I will tell you, if our PIB was passed, you would have seen so many refineries by now. Because I made up my mind that we must deregulate the oil industry. That's the kind of the problem we have. You don't need an association like the PPPROE. You don't need PEF, Petroleum, what do they call it? PEF. You know? You don't need it.
Senator Meba, let me ask you this directly. There are allegations that the oil measures are simply working to stop this bill from seeing the light of the day. Do you share in this sentiment?
I disagree, because the kind of support I have from the oil majors, you know, it's a situation that keep lingering. The oil majors were happy because the meeting Yaradua called was shared by then Vice President Jonathan, who is not the president. And when we had the meeting, everybody were advised, tell us the best way forward. Everybody wants to see that this is the tax we are going to be paying, like Bala is saying. This is the fiscal regime. This is the regulatory regime. This is what we are going to do. So everybody were happy that part of the host community fund is that if a community vandalizes oil equipment, that community will use its money to repair it. So that is peace in the community. A company says, okay, hydrocarbon tax, this is how much you're going to pay. You are not, because you just wake up tomorrow and say you set up like the ETF. What's that kind of creation? That the petroleum tax, that the education tax, that say, okay, this money is invested in TEFON. So many of the taxes and the companies are not ready to be throwing the money into social things that the government need to care about. So the issue is that if this issue are not addressed, our oil industry is going down. Angola is very wet with oil. The regulatory framework in Angola is set out. Everything is going well for them. Burkina Faso, I even talk about the Horn of Africa and the Great Lake region, Uganda. Oil is going on there. So my own concern is that assessing the work the committee work have been going, the issue of the 10% have erupted into big politics, because those agreements we had have not been re-echoed. So many of the people who are in the Senate now were not there then. And the turnaround of senators. Many of the senators who were working with me, a lot of them are out like me also. So the issue of tying legislative turnover to business is like I spoke to one of my colleagues who said, they say you cannot do more than one term, that somebody else should come and eat. Okay. There is no experience.
Distinguished Senator Meba, a last question to you. And again, while we are discussing this issue, is like you rightly observed, that the 7th legislative year is almost rounding up. And we'd like to ask you, do you see this bill being passed even before it winds up?
I don't. You see why I say so? Because in the life of any Senate, once the country enters into electoral college, it is winding down. The life of a Senate actually ends out of the time where the National Assembly is moving to primaries. Nobody will go and sit down in the Senate now and say he's doing a law, because thinking of it, how you want to, number one, they were between July and November, they are thinking how do they win their primaries. So everybody is going home to try to come back. Now, between now and February end, everybody is like, how did our party win the election? Okay. Now, the legislative activities will resume in March. And that is what they call wind-up activities. Everybody trying to see people who are wounded, people are not coming back, see how they reorganize their brain to say, I'm going home. People who are coming back now say, look, do I continue with my committee or do I need to change my committee? So you can start seeing alignment, because by March, they will know who is coming back and who is not coming back. They will know if PDP is still majority in the House so that the Senate President can come back, so people start to lobby him for new identity. So this is not the time to pass a bill.
Okay. Now, considering against the background of the falling crude, price globally, what will be the implication of this if this bill is not passed within this legislative year again?
The implication become worse. The implication become worse because there's major decisions on oil projects are going to be kept on the table. Number one, if it was in a deregulated economy, the effect now would be a balance. Oil price is falling and the pump price of petrol is also falling. But here, because it's a regulated market, how do we have a situation where crude price is falling and pump price of petroleum is static? So many projects will be kept on hold because what is driving everybody is the oil price. The economics of any project is the profit it brings to the company. But if you are investing tens of billions of dollars and you know that oil price is falling, everybody will start to stay. Well, even you, if it was you will stay and say, let's watch what is happening. And already we are in a situation where, because of excitement from what is expected, anxiety from what is expected of the law, have stalled a lot of projects. I can count Total and two other companies have taken giant projects to Angola and, stay calm on the Nigerian own, waiting for what the bill will bring. So, three things that the Nigerian people will do. The NNPC, as I said, have been apprehensive because a whole lot of portions of the law need to take away their powers. I'm very sure they would have gotten over that now, because I was like a stubborn professional in politics in the Senate who knows who you cannot deceive. Okay. They would have gotten around that now. But what I can recommend now is a committee. The president should really set up a committee of experts, like consulting between the National Assembly and the Ministry and NNPC to try to see how they can broker a deal to pass the bill. That is what I'm available if they want to give me the job.
Distinguished
I'm available. I can do this job.
Distinguished Senator Lee Meba, representing Rivers South East Senatorial District 2003-2011, and of course he was Chairman Joint Committee on PIB and Chairman Senate Committee on Petroleum Upstream 2003 and 2011. Thank you for those wonderful suggestions and for your perspective on this topic. And Mr. Bala Zaka will be joining you in a short while after the break in Lagos. Please do stay with us.
The time has come once more for us to make the right choice. We did it before, we can do it again. Let us lay aside our differences and think about Nigeria. Let us vote for Goodluck Jonathan again.
Vote Goodluck Jonathan and Namadi Sambo for President and Vice President 2015. Vote PDP.
This message is brought to you courtesy Transformation Ambassadors of Nigeria. TAN, for one vision, Nigeria.
We said to you, we really love you. Thank you for being with us.
Merry Christmas and a prosperous New Year.
Do you know? Your favorite Dabble Herbert toothpaste in a new look. Now endorsed by the Nigerian Dental Association.
It's brushing time.
Dabble Herbert toothpaste. Strong and shiny teeth, naturally.
All right, thank you for joining us on this conversation on Petroleum Industry Bill. And just before we introduce the next set of guests in Abuja studio, let's get back to Mr. Balazaka in our Lagos Network Center. Mr. Baka, just before the distinguished Senator Limeba left, he said he didn't think that the international oil companies are working against this bill. But reports we hear say that they are worried and concerned about what will accrue to the government, that the government might get some more percentage, from all the whatever provisions of the bill. And besides, the tax levy will kind of infringe on their profits. Do you share his view, or do you think that the international oil companies are working against this bill?
100% shares the views of the distinguished senator. But before I address that, I want to say something about the perceived power of the minister. I would want everybody to understand that the minister's position is just like the position of a strategic manager or a strategic thinker. A strategic thinker or a manager is just there to take long-term and strategic decisions. Before anything gets to the strategic manager, in this case, the minister, it must have been discussed at the operational level. It must have been also discussed at the tactical level. Whatever is being collated at the operational and tactical level is what is taken to the strategic manager to review. So the minister is basically like a coordinator. What we should be bothered about should not be the powers of the minister, but rather we should be bothered about the qualification of somebody who should be the minister of that sensitive institution in Nigeria. And if you ask me about the qualification, all I will tell you is this: any Nigerian of any extraction within Nigeria that has the technical ability, that has the coordinative, intuitive, and managerial capability should be given the opportunity to sit there and manage or coordinate the industry. And when you look at it from that angle, then sentiments will be wished away, will be removed. Because the reason why people started talking about the powers of the minister was more of an issue of probably perception. So that is it. Come up with what should be the qualification or the credentials of the person that is just going to sit there. Just like the way we're talking about our elections. Look at the quality and the credentials of the candidates and vote according to that. Then on the feeling or thinking that the IOCs or international oil companies are those who are actually trying to thwart this, I 100% disagree. Because Nigeria is an independent and a sovereign nation. And like I explained earlier, the architect of our economy, right, and the structure of our economy can be designed, managed, and directed by us as Nigerians. So any other person who is coming in as an investor is going to lie or work in tandem with what you are saying or what you want. But every private company, whether Nigerian company or a foreign company, is there for profit maximization. They are not for charity. They don't provide free services like government. But we should also understand that some of these companies don't have free cash that they kept. Some of them have collected debts or loans, and there is what we call cost of capital or interest that they need to pay back to their creditors. And even if they have shareholders, they need to pay their shareholders what is due to their shareholders, in this case, dividend. So at some point, they cannot just be keeping idle funds. They will want to know what is there for them, no matter how harsh the laws are. Let people know. But if you leave it as a bill, then nobody is protected. The contract is not binding. And let's look at it this way. The PIB can also be viewed as a work in progress.
Bala Zaka, petroleum engineer from Lagos, they are speaking on the PIB bill. I would like to thank you so much for your time and hope that you have a great day. We'll come back here in Abuja where we have a couple of gentlemen here in the studio. I'd like to begin by introducing distinguished Senator Kabir Garba Mafara is the Vice Chairman. Marafa, beg your pardon. Senator Kabir Garba Marafa, Vice Chairman, Senate Committee on Petroleum Upstream. Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you.
We also have Malam Awal Musa Rafsanjani, Executive Director, Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center, CISLAC. Good morning, Mr. Rafsanjani. Thank you for joining us for this conversation.
Good morning. Good morning.
Perhaps, Claire, if we want to take over, it would be appropriate to ask the Honorable
Distinguished
Senator here. Where are we on that bill? What is the status of the PIB bill?
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Ibrahim. The status of the bill as of today is it is still passing through a rigorous legislative process. Like you know, and every Nigerian knows, the PIB is quite an important bill. It touches the economic, nerve center of the country's, income flow. So it's not a bill that you can pass, with haste. So we are doing everything possible to see that we give the industry a bill that it deserves.
What are those things possible that you're doing? And basically, what are the concerns of distinguished members, about this bill? What are the specific concerns about the bill that it's taken this, time to pass?
Let me first say that when the bill was read on the floor of the Senate, it was referred to 4 committees because of its sensitive nature. With my committee, that is the Petroleum Upstream Committee, as the lead committee. We have the Petroleum Downstream Committee, we have the Gas Committee, and Judiciary, was added to the committees, to give, a kind of balancing act, if you like it, because, of some perceived, lopsidedness in the way and manner the committees in the Senate especially, I will limit myself to the Senate, not the National Assembly, are being formed. So the Senate Committee on Judiciary was added, and with a clear mandate by the Senate President that the chairman would be the co-chair, of the entire now PIB committee. That is from the 4. Yes, the joint. The upstream committee was made the lead committee, and the committee on judiciary was made to co-chair, the deliberations of the committee. So our first assignment was we looked at the PIB, and give each committee, what concerns it. That is the gas aspect of the PIB was given to the gas committee to look into. The downstream sector, was given what concerns it to look into it, and the upstream sector, was mandated to look at the upstream content of the committee. This was done, to fast track the process, and after doing everything, we now converge together and look at the submission of the various committees, while the judiciary committee is there to work with the main committee, that is the petroleum upstream committee. So in each of these sectors, people are still looking at their own. So I can only give you maybe an update because we have not received, the joint report from both committees.
Okay, let me quickly ask you. The Senate President has made public pronouncements, really, assuring that the bill will be passed even within this legislative year. And might there be any reason, as Vice Chairman of the committee, might there be any reason why this will not happen?
Yeah, there are a lot of reasons why it cannot happen. The Senate President is the leader of the entire National Assembly, and he is the head of the Senate, like you know. But he doesn't go through every bill before it is committed to any committee to know its problems, and why it should have maybe a speedy passage, or why it should be thrown out if the need arises. That is why it is committed to the committees. So it is at the committee levels that you x-ray it, you now look at the pros and cons and everything that relates to the bill. Now, a lot has been said about the committee, and it is always quite interesting to watch people comment about it. But what you don't see or what you don't hear from people is to say in specific terms, what do we stand to gain by passing this bill? I listened just now to a petroleum engineer, I think Balazaka from Lagos. He made several assertions, several promises, that is by the bill. But he failed to specify, in specific terms, to say that section so-so would, if passed, would promote or stimulate so-so section of the economy or something. You only hear people talking about more of sentiment. More of sentiment. So they didn't look at the bill to say that this is what it's all about. He even made assertion that they have petroleum economists, they have petroleum lawyers that are there to guide the National Assembly. Yes, we know we have all these people, but the issue is nobody says from the National Assembly that we are lacking maybe in so-so area or so-so area. It is not the issue. Looking at the bill, it is before us. We are looking at it. We are the ones that knows it. One can see that the bill itself lacks internal cohesion or harmony. Some sections of the bill, are against, themselves or other sections. So when you are talking of a very important bill like that, now you have to look into those aspects.
Just before we bring in our guests from the civil society, what aspects of those bills are against themselves? You may wish to be specific so that we'll understand what you're talking about.
I would give you an example, maybe. When we talk of internal harmony or cohesion, the bill promised to enhance, like for instance, it promised to enhance production. Now, but it limited the actions of the frontier exploration. It was reduced to a mere appendage in the office of the minister. Now, this frontier exploration is responsible for exploring oil, in the other parts of the country, apart from Niger Delta itself. But the whole bill reduced the frontier exploration, for instance, to a mere appendage in the office of the minister. You can call it inconsequential level. Now, it also talked about the 10%, so much talked about 10% community cost fund. Good. Now, the 10% community host fund is a direct collusion with the Nigerian Constitution. You cannot, the Nigerian Constitution clearly spelled how monies are received, where they go into, and how these monies are disbursed. If you take, like, for instance, the 13% derivation, it is in the Constitution. So you cannot supplant the provisions of the Constitution with a National Assembly Act. You cannot. There is no way the National Assembly Act can say, okay, we are going to take 10% of these monies and put it in so-so place. You cannot. You can only come by way of constitutional amendment. Now,
let me hold you there on your example. Let's quickly hear from Awal Musa Rafsanjani at the other part of the studio. Rafsanjani, your civil society, you've been in the forefront of calling for the passage of this bill. As we speak, is yet to see the light of the day. So many issues, contending issues that have been spoken about. You just had the distinguished senator talk about lack of internal harmony. Are these problems you also see from your point of view?
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think it is true there's some contradiction, and there's some concern, that we have, despite the fact that we have been, advocating for the passage of this bill. The previous, speakers, they spoke about the fact that there was no power to the minister. I don't think they are referring to the current bill, that the National Assembly is looking at. If you look at the current bill, clearly there is a power that, is given to the minister. And in fact, the minister, of petroleum, has a discretionary power, which might even be, abused, because the minister, I think, in conceptualization of the bill, they did not think about, the institution. They talked about personality, thinking that maybe perhaps they are going to be there forever. So therefore, the powers, is like, just to the, person that is currently there as the minister, whereas, excuse me, where the minister will be, the supervisor would, would coordinate all the activities, in the, oil sector, which will include also the renewal of, granting licensing, amending, and even extending or revoking the, upstream. We think, this might be abused, especially when you have so much corruption in the sector. So we have a concern, in terms of that, powers, devoted to the minister. Number two, the issue of the, host community, funds that we're talking about. Well, the concern we have is that, of course, like I agree with the senator that, we must not, legislate anything that will contradict the Constitution. But what we thought we should do is to come up with a legislation that, would also specify how that, would also be, given to the community. Again, another area which we also have concern is that there seems to be no really serious punishment, or deterrent punishment for the environmental abuses that has also characterized the oil and gas sector operation, that we have in Nigeria. We think that it is important that, if PIB is going to be passed, there must be a strengthened, law that will ensure and guarantee and protect the environment. Another area of concern which we also have is that this law must be complementarity with other legislation. Like, for example, you still have, confidentiality, or rather, the confidentiality clause, Secrecy Act, is embedded in the, in the PIB. And, if we are going to really have, the best international practices, where contract, would be even known, if you go to other places, contracts, oil contracts are even in the website. But in Nigeria, that is not the case. So the issue of transparency, and the disclosure, must be properly and clearly, defined, which currently the bill is lacking, Then another area which we have concern is the independent, oversight of the regulatory agency. The currently, the way, the partnership between the oil companies and, the Nigeria Regulatory, agency is a partnership, So if you are going to really, oversight and ensure that, all those, compliance, are comply with, you must, ensure that, the PIB is done in such a manner that there's an independent, oversight mechanism. Again, we also have concern on the issue of, lack of grievancy, mechanism in the bill. We think it is important that, the grievancy mechanism must be embedded in the bill, Another area which we also have concern.
Sorry, before you're raising concerns now, and genuine as these concerns might be, you're bringing them at a time when a lot of Nigerians simply want to see this bill pass. Put these concerns of yours alongside the impact lack of passing this bill is having on the economy and the dangers. Which one supersedes?
Well, I think the lack of transparency, in the oil and gas sector, is what led us to, the kind of outright looting and stealing you have in the sector. And that's why we are, very much concerned that the transparency component, must be properly embedded in the bill. And we've been advocating for that, and we've been talking with both the National Assembly, the House of Representatives, and the Senate to make sure that before passing the bill, the disclosure component, the secrecy component, is expunged, from this bill, except if it involves real security issues, Otherwise, if you do that, and without also, getting community, the affected community to be participated in the, discussion and, maybe consultation, will also continue to linger a problem. So we hope that as the National Assembly, we urge them to pass this bill. They will also take into consideration some of this. And this is not today, advocacy we have been doing. So the National Assembly should be able to, by now, because they have the power, actually, whatever the executive gives them is a draft. They have the power to tinker with this bill in the best interest of Nigeria. So I don't think the National Assembly should have really excuse for not really moving forward and taking what would be the best interest of Nigerians, because whatever the executive submit to the National Assembly is a draft. It's a draft. What they come up with eventually is what will become the law of the land. So I think the National Assembly should be able to take some of this observation and concern that we have, especially, that those concerns will help to strengthen, a legislation that will ensure, maximum transparency and accountability, in the petroleum sector, which has been characterized by looting and stealing, in the current disposition.
I'm sure Rafsanjani, I'm sure distinguished senator here is listening and has taken in some of your suggestions. But distinguished Senator Marafa, let me quickly ask you, this is a very important instrument for the petroleum industry to be regulated. Again, given the developments in the global oil market, it has become very pertinent for us to pass this bill. How might this bill be passed? The Minister of Petroleum Resources was reported to have said during the last World Economic Forum that this bill could be passed in clauses or in segments. Is that a way out?
Unfortunately, she is she is neither a member of the Senate nor a member of the House of Representatives. So I believe she is expressing her own views.
It was a suggestion.
Well, that is a suggestion, but like I told you, maybe she didn't care to look at the content of what she, when I say she as a representative of the executive, passed to the National Assembly. They passed to us, a bill, like I told you, that lacks internal harmony, like I have enumerated. It's a bill that is inconsistent. Inconsistent in the sense that, like what my friend here said, you see different sections of this bill abrogate, themselves, in succession. And like I said earlier, this is the tragedy, with maybe the Nigerian critics. They don't look at content of issues before, they come out to criticize the National Assembly. For God's sake, we are not rubber stamps. Now, if you look at, like, for instance, Section 190, it promises all the transparency needed in the industry. And I think that is one of the essence of the bill. Like my friend said, there is a lot of, perceived or real corruption in the industry. So one of the things the bill, you know, is designed, you know, to eliminate is these issues of corruption. That is transparency in the way and manner, you know, business is being transacted in the district. And when you look at Section 90, it promises all this transparency kind of initiatives and so on. But immediately in Section 191 of the bill, you know, all that is said was abrogated by simply giving the president the discretionary power to award licenses.
Okay, so find out for you. So what you're saying from all we can deduce is that this bill might not see the light of day within this legislative year.
Well, for all I want to say is, you know, the legislature is the legislature is doing its work, and we must be appreciated. You know, you have to look at you know, the value of what we are.
Are you likely to pass this bill before?
We are doing our best, but we would not be intimidated by anybody. You know, we would not be intimidated. We have to look at the various sections of these things, like I said, that are inconsistent. Like the 190 and 191, I told you, there is Section 118.
Is the time you have now, between now and the end of the 7th this year, your legislative calendar,
Madam,
is it enough for you to do any meaningful?
You see, it is better to be late, they said, than never. This is a bill that is very important, and we cannot be intimidated by anybody to pass it. Look, people need to ask even themselves, what are our own constraints? We have our own constraint as a legislature. How much has the minister spent, you know, how many billions of naira spent in, you know, advertisements, jingles, billboards all over the place? How much, you know, is available to the National Assembly to look at models, you know, from different parts of the world to make sure that what we are passing, you know, is in line with international best practices. We don't need to go in a haste just to pass a bill that will, you know, make nonsense of what we are saying.
It could spill into the 8th legislative...
it could. We inherited it, like my distinguished...
so you are likely to also pass it on?
Well, I don't know. All I am saying is we are trying our best, but we have to look at the content of the bill. And I would want Nigerians, when talking, you know, to talk of specific sections like I have enumerated. Like this Section 190, has all Nigerians been able to look at 190 and 191? Have they been able to look at Section 118, Sub 1, and 1184 and 3051? They are in direct conflict, all of them. Now, have Nigerians been able to look at Section 116 and the Constitution? That is the community host fund. Now, what sections of this bill, you know, promise all that we as Nigerians envisage, you know, to gain from the passage of the bill? So it is not just talking about PIB. We need to say these are the sections that even the minister, like you said, what she said elsewhere, she should have been able to narrow her observations to some section that, for instance, if they pass so section, this is what we stand to benefit from it.
Can you tell Nigerians what they should expect from the National Assembly concerning this bill, the PIB bill? I would like you to look at Nigerians right now and tell Nigerians this bill will be passed within this calendar year or will not be passed within this calendar year. That's the last question to you.
Yes, what I would want to assure Nigerians is they should expect something better than the offshore-onshore dichotomy. We would not be pushed around, we would not be intimidated to repeat the mistake that was made during the offshore-onshore debate and the passage. So we are going to do something that would help the petroleum industry, not something that would rather kill it. We would not do it. So we are looking at the bill, you know, with a view of fastening it within the time frame of this. But if need be, we can extend it to any time. We would do the right, the needful.
Distinguished Senator.
Our Sanjani, let me quickly ask you this. Now, you heard from the distinguished senator reasons why this bill might not be passed in this legislative year. If these reasons are cited and we don't get to pass this bill, what would be the feeling among the civil society and indeed Nigerians as a whole?
Well, you know, of course, there will be huge, you know, frustration and, you know, disappointment, you know, from Nigerians if, based on the observation that civil society have made and based on the contribution that civil society has been making, you know, to the legislature, free of charge. We are not consultant like Bala in Lagos and other people, that do consultancy. We do this in free of charge. We provide support National Assembly free of charge to be able to do their work. So if they did not take all those, based on, of course, consultation that we have been doing with communities, with the different stakeholders. If they did not do that, within the time framework, Nigeria will be disappointed, because we think they have the power. The Constitution of the Federal Republic, of Nigeria has given them the power, and they have the legislative power to be able to make law for the, for good governance for this country. And for goodness sake, we cannot, continue to give excuses. They have the powers to tinker with whatever, draft of the legislation that was given to them by the executive, and I don't think we should delay it, given the kind of outright looting and stealing and that is going on in the oil and gas sector. We are not, look at other countries, Kuwait, Egypt, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia. All the countries, Venezuela, all the countries, that are not even up to Nigeria today. They are better placed than Nigeria because they have a sound system that guarantee optimal, transparency and accountability, and they, all is used for the development. Ours, has become, a problem. So I think the National Assembly, one of the biggest, people they can do to the country, if I will call it a pebble, is to look at this thing with ultimate, with timely, and conscious, effort to make sure that they legislate a law that will, stop the kind of outright, stealing and corruption that we are seeing in the sector.
Anwar Sani Rafsanjani, thank you for your perspectives. And Mr. Rafsanjani is Executive Director, Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center, CISLAC. Thank you. And of course, we'd like to thank distinguished Senator Kabiri Garba Marafa, Vice Chairman, Senate Committee on Petroleum Upstream. Thank you very much, distinguished Senator, for joining us. All right, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria. Right now, we'll take a break.
We said to you, we really love you. Thank you for being with us.
Merry Christmas and a prosperous New Year.
Do you know your favorite Devil Herbert toothpaste in a new look? Now endorsed by the Nigerian Dental Association.
It's brushing time.
Devil Herbert toothpaste, strong and shiny teeth, naturally.
Let's turn attention to sporting stories now. Following series of litigations after the Nigeria Football Federation, the NFF, September 30 elections, now NFF is to set up an arbitration panel to resolve those disputes. New hope for Stephen Keshi getting coaching job with an African country emerge again as Obafemi Martins reveals why he called time on international career. Let's join our sports team now.
Welcome. Let's talk sport now. The Nigeria Football Federation, NFF, will set up an arbitration panel to resolve the disputes arising from the September 30 elections on January 8. The General Secretary of the NFF, Musa Amadu, has said that the Executive Committee of the NFF will meet in Abuja to establish an independent body. According to reports, a letter from Barrister Ike Bokwe, an aspirant, has requested for an arbitration panel to decide over the elective Congress held in Warri, Delta State, which produced a Maju Pinnick-led board. Barrister Igbokwe, who contested for first vice president of the NFF in the September 30 elections, received approval from FIFA to seek redress outside the regular court after he had his appeal nullified by the majority members of the Appeals Committee. Top sources say that the NFF has been given directive from FIFA to set up a panel to settle an argument from contradictory reports between the majority and minority of the Appeal Committee. The arbitration panel is expected to be a three-man team with a lawyer representing each of the split committee and an independent judge. Now hope is rising again for Stephen Keshi in getting the 2015 AFCON host Equatorial Guinea coaching job. The Equatorial Guinea coaching musical chairs seem to have taken a new twist as reports have emerged that Nigeria coach Stephen Keshi is in the running to replace Spanish coach Andoni. This is after he was sacked last week after a spate of bad results during the training camp in Portugal. Keshi, who failed to qualify Nigeria for the 2015 Africa Cup of Nations, has long been touted as the man to lead the Zealand national when the tournament starts on January 17. But Andoni got the nod ahead of the former Mali and Togo coach, with barely time to prepare and one of the few teams not to have announced a provisional squad. Equatorial Guinea are said to be looking at Keshi, who was at the draw for the tournament held in Malabo, despite Nigeria missing out of the tournament. The team had earlier lost to Portuguese fourth-tier side Vilafranquez and Benfica's B-side at the Portuguese training camp, which sealed Andoni's fate. Equatorial Guinea replaced Morocco as host of the 2015 edition of the CAF Africa Cup of Nations after the North Africans declined to host the tournament because of fears over the Ebola virus. Argentine coach Esteban Becker, who coaches the Equatorial Guinea women's team, is temporarily in charge, pending when a coach is announced to take over from the sacked Andoni. Equatorial Guinea in Group A of the 2015 Africa Cup of Nations alongside neighbors Gabon, Burkina Faso and Congo. Still on Stephen Keshi, but this time someone is talking about him. Seattle Sounders striker Obafemi Martins has said that he's been frozen out of the national team was due to coach Stephen Keshi's personal decisions. The Seattle Sounders forward just came off a season where he led his side to Major League Soccer playoffs as well as winning the Supporters' Shield. Despite being in top form and scoring 17 goals in the just ended season, where he earned nomination for the Most Valuable Player award, Martins was ignored for the Super Eagles 2014 FIFA World Cup campaign.
Martins making a run, gets in there, what an effort, what a goal!
All right, thank you, Musbah Dan Wahab, for that package. Now you know the fate of the PIB bill. Your guess is as good as ours here on the program. It's Good Morning Nigeria, and that's how it's been this very first Monday of the year 2015. We thank you for being part of it. We hope to see you again same time tomorrow on the same network service, the NTA. I am Claire Adelabu Abdul Razak.
And I am Ibrahim Adra. Do have a fruitful day.